My name is Luke de Pulford. I am a director of the Arise Foundation, a commissioner on the Conservative Party Human Rights Commission, and I'm involved in campaigning on Hong Kong. Why am I involved in Hong Kong? The truth is that the real reason I'm involved in Hong Kong is because it is important. Hong Kong has become the fault line, the dividing line between the rules-based values system, the rules-based order of the West and of human rights, and of a completely different system which does not respect them. That fault line, that front line is Hong Kong. That's why I'm interested in it. That's what motivates me more than anything. But the truth is that I do have a family connection to Hong Kong. My grandfather was in fact very senior in the British Army looking after the police in Hong Kong in the 1960s after the Japanese occupation, and my family lived there. So there is a certain connection to Hong Kong, but the reason I'm working on it is not that. It's not that I have a strong personal family connection to the place. It's because what is happening in Hong Kong has significance not just for that little city, teetering on the end of that landmass. It has significance for the whole world, for everybody, and for the rules-based order, for the entire rights framework. We depend upon resolution of what's happening in Hong Kong. The truth is that international lobbying has a language. It has a vernacular, and that vernacular is diplomacy. And diplomacy does not work without representation. So the movement needs representation to engage. It's been doing that, in a way, by various people sort of turning up. And they've done a good job, The people who have turned up to the US have been very successful in their lobbying. We've had some people come to the UK, and they've been very helpful at pushing the agenda up. They've been great. It's not enough. If you are going to achieve, in my view, major change, major commitment from the international community, the movement has to speak as one. It has to say, this is what we want, and you are going to have to deliver it. Right now, it can't do that. Now, I don't think I'm being controversial here when I say that your government, the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region government, does not have the ability to grant your 5 demands, even if they wanted to. Why? Because Beijing will not let them. So the question for the movement is, how are you going to get these demands? And the only answer to that is, you're going to need the international community to put pressure on Beijing. How do you do that unless you're actually asking for things from the international community? Right now, you're not. I think there need to be very clear asks from the international community that have the support of the people in Hong Kong, like the 5 demands, but a smaller number of demands, because I think 5 is too many, a smaller number of demands specifically focused on the international community. My big request, if you like, of the movement would be help them to help you. And the way that you help them to help you is you tell them what you want, and you enable there to be some representation, and you don't do silly things that makes it impossible to help you. And what I mean by that is that, some kind of engagement in a terrible act of violence. There could well be some instance of violence in Hong Kong that will make it impossible for the international community to support the people of Hong Kong in their quest for freedom. You should be really clear about that. If there is something like a bomb, which people might feel will be a way to increase news coverage of Hong Kong, to make sure that the eyes of the world are upon Hong Kong, to pursue the tactics of people like the IRA in Hong Kong, and I know there are people within the movement who think that that might be a good idea. If that happens, if there is a bomb, it will make it impossible for the people of the West, particularly the people of the West, politicians within the West to stand shoulder to shoulder with them. You have to accept the pragmatic reality that that makes it harder to support you internationally. We know, I've seen it. I've lost support from politicians for the cause of Hong Kong because of violence. And it's something that I have to be clear about. I think that it's perfectly possible to maintain a leaderless ethos, but also have representation. It's not for me to say how to do that, it's for the movement itself. But I think it's possible, for sure. There could be a process-led way of doing it. The crucial thing is to make sure that all of the aspects of the movement are represented. Because if you don't have that, you don't have representation. It would be easy to say, okay, these pan-democrats over here who believe this stuff and who are against violence, we just want them. But if you don't have the people who believe in Hong Kong independence or who believe that violent resistance is justified, if you cannot bring all these people together, you will not be able to engage as a representative of the movement. The entire movement needs to be represented. And that's possible. I think it's possible by determining a platform. So what do you want? You know, if you find something that everybody agrees that you want, then you have a common platform to build your unity from, particularly with regard to the international community. That's one way of doing it. There are many other ways, and I don't want to, it isn't for me to design that, it's for the movement, but I do believe that those are problems that need to be solved. They already will have to play a role in representation by virtue of the fact that they are district councillors. So they have to do that, it's their job. Because they have a certain legitimacy through the fact that they were democratically elected, they will find it easier to articulate their cause on behalf of the movement that they represent, for democracy and for human rights and for autonomy and for the way of life of the people of Hong Kong. I think that there is a place for them in that representation, of course, a very important place for them. But I don't think that it's an exhaustive one. I think that there are parts of the movement that are quite independent of the kinds of democratic causes that are pursued by district councillors. And because of that, there needs to be a way of bringing all of those people under that umbrella. And if district councillors can do that, great. My instinct is that it might need something else. Do I think that Magnitsky sanctions are effective? I think that sanctions are a very important part of the strategy. And the strategy is to secure autonomy, human rights, and the way of life for the people of Hong Kong. That is the strategy. Magnitsky sanctions can help with that where there are human rights abuses. But Magnitsky sanctions on their own don't get you any closer to where you need to be. On top of that, the truth is that Magnitsky sanctions are not used very much. And even when they are, the most that they cause is a bit of diplomatic discomfort between the nations that impose them. So, yes, they are very important. Yes, they are necessary because there have been human rights abuses which do need to be punished and which probably aren't going to be punished by the local government. Okay, so yes, they are important. But they don't get you universal suffrage. This is a very big question, because it's really a question about diplomacy and the way that diplomacy works. Is the carrot more effective than the stick, is really what you're asking. The stick is sanctions, trade sanctions, Magnitsky sanctions, that's the stick. You're saying, if you don't do what we want, we'll punish you. Okay, so does that work? I think it certainly adds diplomatic leverage, yes. Is it as powerful as a positive statement in favour of Hong Kong's way of life? I don't know. I think you need both. I think you need the carrot and the stick. Okay, and the carrot for China is having more fruitful bilateral and multilateral relations with states based upon common values. That's the carrot. And then the stick is, well, we will pursue sanctions, or we will pursue some way of letting you know that if you place yourself outside of the rules-based order and you do this kind of stuff, there will be consequences. And that's needed too. I am a bit skeptical about some of this stuff, because I think that we've done quite a lot of stick and not much carrot. And I think that if we need to do a bit more carrot, we should think about how to do it more. My message to the UK public would be that you need to wake up and smell the coffee over what's happening in China. You know, this might feel like a long way away to you, but it isn't. Your universities are full of students from China, and they are students who pull in a lot of money and revenue for your universities. And because there's so much money coming into your universities from that part of the world, your universities do not feel free to speak out about human rights abuses in China. We've seen this over and over and over again. You know, we have to keep saying it. There are 1 million people in camps in Western China, extrajudicially, on some spurious ground of being suspected terrorists. This is completely unacceptable. This is the worst case of state slavery in the world for a long time. We can't turn a blind eye to that. And the people of the UK need to realise that when we're selling off our infrastructure to China because we're so desperate for their money, what is it that we are selling it to? We're selling it to a country which does not share the same values that we do about human rights, about the rule of law and democracy. And they're showing that very clearly in what's happening in Western China at the moment. That is what we're selling our infrastructure to. So when we consider whether or not we're going to allow Huawei into our 5G infrastructure, that's exactly what is at stake. Huawei is a country which is accused of facilitating, knowingly, the persecution of the Uyghurs in Western China. The Security Bureau in Western China is thought to depend upon Huawei's infrastructure and technology. Is this a country? Is this a company that we want to be dealing with in the UK? And my answer would be no. I don't think that that company would withstand even the smallest amount of human rights due diligence. And for us to be extending the hand to Huawei and allowing them in to deal with our security infrastructure is utterly crazy. And that's before you even get to the questions about intelligence sharing and all of the problems that it might cause diplomatically for other nations. So I think the people of the UK need to wake up. Wake up and smell the coffee. China upholds a different value system to us. The Chinese Communist Party is moving farther and farther away from the values that we purport to share. It's not coming closer. And if that's the case, we need to be very careful, because this has already arrived. It's here. Our institutions are being bought out by China. We're allowing it to happen. This isn't a kind of creeping integration. It's very rapid. And before we know it, we're all going to find ourselves unable to speak, unable to defend our values, because we have sold so much of our infrastructure, so much of our institutions to China, that we fear what not having their money will cause those institutions. That is a disastrous situation to be in, but that's what we're heading towards. Don't give up. You cannot give up. Your own government wants you to give up. The authorities in Beijing want you to give up. And it would be so convenient for some countries in the international community if you gave up, because you're a headache and because your cause for freedom is one which is causing a lot of people difficulty and discomfort. They want you to give up. Don't give them that luxury. You cannot give them that luxury, because your cause is one of justice. It's one which is too important. You were promised universal suffrage. You were promised a much more democratic system than the one that you have. And you must be given the things that you were promised. You will not get them if you give up. But, and I think this is a very important point. While you must continue to pursue your causes with unity, together as much as possible, making sure that you develop common platforms for the things that you want, enabling those of us who are working to support you from abroad to know what you want and to know what the movement speaking with one voice would like to see in Hong Kong. The more that you can do that, the more effective your campaign will become. So don't give up, don't allow there to be disunity. Keep fighting for what you were promised, and we'll keep standing with you.